What is going on, ScalpX Legends? Happy Friday. Boy, oh boy, what a dump that we've seen. This is actually good news for us because when we have sharp corrections like these, this only leaves the probability for the upside to be that much more aggressive. We can see that bears and sellers are aggressively pushing the price down. So we got to look at this from the optics of good news. And now, is there going to be room for us to go down a little bit further? That's kind of what I want to discuss with you right now. Let's dive into the daily first and work our way down. Let's start off with this daily wave count that we've been discussing for some time now. One of the pivotal areas that I've been eyeing is going to be, or was it, excuse me, this 2785 benchmark, which is a 0.76 fib. As you recall, wave 2 was relatively flat, fell to a 0.5 level. So this leaves and calls for a sharp correction for a wave 4. Some of you may be saying or thinking, well, Saint, we violated the peak of wave 1. Shouldn't this be invalidated? And to answer that, yes, in normal cash flow markets, such as stocks or bonds. But when we start discussing cryptocurrency and how volatile and how fast it is, this is not a normal market. So from an Elliott wave thesis, you are right. It shouldn't violate or at least breach wave 1. However, these are going to be those circumstances where you have those anomalies where you can see that we can violate that area and still pull back up. So what am I looking for right now? First, if we are going to be bullish and we're going to have recovery, we need to hold above this 2785 benchmark, essentially really getting to the top of this line, peak of wave 1, which is right around 2886. Now, if we can do that, then really that wick was just a liquidation because most individuals were longing this area, myself included, longing these areas. 2785 was a benchmark for me. I did add back to my position right around about 2663 inside of this area right over here. I did add back to my position. So it's something that I'm trading with confidence, if you will. I do have a stop loss that sets right below that wick. That's when I'm going to be out of the position altogether because, like I said, there is room that it could potentially go lower. But let's just look at the optics from a strategy perspective. That's what we're looking at where we need to hold. Now, coupled with that, I'm also looking at where the heat map is showing us that we're running relatively pretty darn cool here in this area. We can see that we've been just on this sharp downtrend, really essentially from October. Since that dump that we had, we've just been running cool in that area. Really what we're looking for when we have corrections to the downside, we want to run hot. I'll zoom in on that a little bit so you can see we're running hot. And if you remember from the detailed stream that we had yesterday, this is what we were discussing. And now the opposite is what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a nice cool down here in this area. And really technical analysis is exactly that, looking at past data and making a conjecture based on that data. Anytime we get into these cool areas, yes, we have small little pullbacks and then we have a little bit more of a dump. But when we get into these colorations, if you will, we start to see rises. So as I was mentioning before, and actually we can use this as an example, this was essentially very similar to what we're seeing right now, sharp correction, right? An initial dump, small little pump up, dump, correction, if you will, that followed a 5-wave impulse. So now we're getting into those cool areas. This calls for the correction to be finding bottom areas. As I was mentioning before, is there room for us to go down a little bit deeper? Yes, we can get down into these 2500 handles, just shy of that 0.88 level, because right over here from a volume, fixed volume range indicator, we have a point of control that sits right around 2514. Do I believe that we're going to get there? Actually, let's take a look at DMI. DMI, I recall, is one of those indicators that show me where the strength is coming from. If we're starting to peak out, if the momentum inside of the market. Now from a DI, which would be bullish, we're relatively flat. Now, same thing with technical analysis. Anytime we get to these flat levels, we start to find recovery. Look at the crosshairs. Look how flat this was. We start to find recovery. Now, the opposite of that, right? When we're looking at ADX in comparison to that, because that's showing strength, as we're getting to these levels, notice how we start peaking out. Anytime we get to these we start peaking out, whether it be bullish or be bearish. Now, the benchmark that I like to utilize is roughly around 60. So if this ADX, where we are currently right now, starts to peak, that's going to be confirmation for me that we've hit the bottom. If we continue to go down a little bit lower, then this ADX is just going to stretch a little bit higher up, and then it's going to start making these peaks in this area. Once it starts making those peaks, that's how we get that valley. So we're looking for that valley here inside this area. I will give you some lower levels. One of my indicators was picking up a couple of different patterns for us. I'm going to go down to a 4-hour for us real quick. And we can see here that we do have lower levels, as I was mentioning, right over here inside of this benchmark, 2439, 2617, inside this benchmark. So if I'm going to be utilizing whether it be the ABCD, the C pony, or Gartley, any one of these 3 patterns that are inside of here, we can see that it does have lower targets for us. But just overall looking at this, I feel like it's going to be a in the sense of taking longs here inside this area. I feel like these are going to be well suited for us. We can float down to lower time frames, such as like 1 minutes, to look at the wave count from there and recalculate that. I'll be doing that accordingly, but I do want to put out this information for you guys in the event that some of us are calling for, even lower. I'm not taking those off the table. All I'm saying is this, is that we have a higher probability of going higher right now to collect that liquidity, create a narrative that we're going to be going to another all-time high and then dumping down even lower. I do have projected for this wave 5 to be somewhere around a new all-time high, but what if we run into truncation and wave 5 is either a double top or even lower, somewhere around like the 400s or even 4600 handles? Those are all still viable options. One of the higher time frame scenarios that I was looking at was from a weekly, is we can see that we've basically cleared this fair value gap. That's really what we were looking at right over here. So essentially this whole move down like this essentially was a wave A. Now, if we're going to run into truncation for wave 5 and we truly are inside of a bear market, then we're going to be looking at wave B. If this wave B gets invalidated and let's say that we go higher, then that's where the daily count comes into play, and that's where we see the all-time high. So we have 2 scenarios that we're looking at here. And in both scenarios, whether it be bullish or bearish, both of them are calling for bottom areas. These are bottom calls in regard. So don't feel like it's just going to continue to keep on plummeting. Even though the charts are showing those sharp corrections, that is a very positive sign that we're going to have a massive impulse to the upside. So hopefully you're confident enough with that. Hopefully this information serves you well to give you the confidence behind that. If you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out to me. I did post a couple different educational posts for you guys, something that you guys can thumb through throughout the course of the weekend, especially on Saturdays when it's low volume, to just kind of on Elliott Wave thesis, how to utilize Fibonacci retracement tools and what the settings that I'll be using anytime I'm measuring out price action altogether. Other than that, have a phenomenal remainder of your Friday. Be profitable going into the weekend. Be safe. And above all, God bless you guys. I'll catch you guys soon. Peace.